Carla Johnson walked into the upscale boutique with the quiet confidence of someone used to navigating the world on her own terms. The gleaming glass doors parted in front of her, and a cool rush of air greeted her as she entered. The soft hum of the store's ambient music blended with the low murmur of other customers browsing through the racks. The clothes displayed were elegant, expensive, the kind of place she didn't often frequent, but today felt different. Today, Carla had a rare moment of self-indulgence, and she was going to enjoy it. She moved gracefully through the aisles, admiring the fabrics, the styles, the patterns. She could already picture herself in a few of the outfits. A navy blue dress caught her eye, the silk shimmering as it hung delicately on the rack. Carla reached for it, her fingers brushing against the fabric when a voice interrupted her thoughts. "Excuse me, ma'am. I'm going to have to ask you to hand over your bag before you enter the store," said the security guard, his tone flat and authoritative. His name tag read Marty. Carla froze, a slight frown forming on her face. She glanced at him, perplexed. "Excuse me? What do you mean?" "There are customers here with bags," she replied, gesturing toward the other shoppers around her. The guard stood firm, arms crossed, and repeated, "Company policy, ma'am. I'm sorry, but you won't be allowed to enter the store unless you hand over your bag." A chill ran through Carla. This wasn't right. She looked around the store again, noting the other customers casually strolling through with their handbags and shopping totes. None of them were being asked to hand over their belongings. None of them were being treated like this. And then it hit her. She understood what this was about. "This is about my bag, isn't it?" Carla asked, her voice steady but edged with the realization that this wasn't a simple misunderstanding. The security guard didn't respond, but the way he stared at her, with a cold, unwavering gaze, confirmed her suspicion. Carla's heart raced, but she kept her composure. "I'm not handing over my bag," she said firmly, her voice unwavering. "There's no reason for me to do that." The guard stepped closer, blocking her path. "Ma'am, you either hand over your bag, or I can't let you in," he insisted, his voice still calm, but there was an unmistakable edge to it. Carla took a deep breath, her mind racing for a solution. She knew the law. She knew her rights. "Let me speak to your manager," she said coolly. A long pause. The guard looked at her, then nodded curtly. "I'll get Bridget. But I'm telling you, ma'am, this is standard procedure." "Fine," Carla replied, her voice steady, though her hands clenched slightly at her sides. Marty walked away, heading to the back of the store. Carla's mind was whirling. She felt a familiar anger rising, the anger that came from being unjustly targeted because of the color of her skin. It wasn't the first time she'd faced this kind of treatment, and it likely wouldn't be the last. But that didn't make it any easier to bear. She wasn't going to let this go. Moments later, a woman appeared, her high heels clicking sharply on the marble floors. She was tall, with platinum blonde hair pulled back in a sleek ponytail. Her name tag read Bridget Golden. She was the manager. "Good afternoon, ma'am," Bridget said, her tone polite but distant. "What seems to be the issue?" Carla didn't mince words. "Your security guard just demanded that I hand over my personal belongings before allowing me into the store." "No one else is being asked to do that," Carla said, her voice calm but firm, her eyes locking onto Bridget's. "This is racial profiling. It's not acceptable." Bridget's smile faltered for a second, and then she recovered. "I'm sorry, ma'am, but this is a store policy. We ask all customers to check their bags upon entry for security reasons." Carla shook her head, the frustration building. "You're asking me to give up my bag when there's no policy stated anywhere that requires it. I've been to plenty of high-end stores before. This is not standard practice." Bridget seemed to hesitate. "I understand your frustration, but there's nothing I can do. Marty was just following protocol." Carla crossed her arms, her posture straightening as she leaned in. "Protocol? This is discrimination, and I won't stand for it." Her voice was a low, controlled force. Bridget opened her mouth to respond, but before she could, the sound of the boutique's front door chimed. Carla turned to see Officer Daniel Humphrey entering the store, his presence immediately commanding attention. He was tall, broad-shouldered, with a tight-fitting police uniform and a stern look on his face. His piercing blue eyes scanned the scene before settling on Carla. "Ma'am, is there a problem here?" Officer Humphrey asked, his tone as cold as his gaze. Carla felt a sinking feeling in her stomach. She had hoped it wouldn't come to this. She took a step back, looking the officer directly in the eye. "Yes, officer, there's a problem," Carla replied, her voice steady, though the anger was now undeniable in her words. "I'm being discriminated against. This security guard and this manager have refused to let me enter the store based on my race." Officer Humphrey narrowed his eyes. "I see. I'm going to need you to step outside with me," he said, his voice becoming authoritative. Carla's chest tightened, but she stood her ground. "I'm not going anywhere. I'm not the one who's done anything wrong here." The tension in the boutique was palpable. Carla stood firm, her arms crossed, her gaze unwavering. Officer Daniel Humphrey, his face a mask of authority, hadn't moved an inch since he'd walked in. Bridget Golden, the manager, stood beside him, her posture stiff and unyielding. Marty, the security guard, hovered by the door, watching the scene unfold with a cold indifference. "Ma'am," Officer Humphrey finally spoke, his voice laced with command, "I need you to step outside with me." Carla's heart raced, but her resolve remained unbroken. She was not going to let them push her around. "No, officer. I'm not going anywhere. I haven't done anything wrong." The officer's jaw clenched as he took a step toward her, his imposing figure towering over Carla. "You're causing a disturbance in this store, ma'am. I'm going to have to ask you to leave." Carla shook her head slowly, her eyes never leaving his. "I'm not the one causing a disturbance. You're the ones who are harassing me for no reason. All I've done is try to shop." Bridget, standing off to the side, interjected, "Officer, we're just following store policy." She was asked to check her bag, and when she refused, we had to call for help. "This isn't a racial issue. It's just store protocol." Carla's frustration boiled over. "Protocol? That's not protocol. That's discrimination, and you know it. I'm being treated differently because of the color of my skin." Officer Humphrey's face hardened, his eyes narrowing as he scanned Carla. "I'm not here to argue with you, ma'am. I'm here to handle the situation. Now, I'm asking you one more time, please step outside." Carla took a deep breath, trying to steady the anger rising within her. "You don't get to just make me leave because you don't like what I'm saying. I'm not going anywhere. And I'm not backing down." The officer's voice dropped, becoming more menacing. "You're resisting arrest now. This is your final warning." Carla felt a chill run down her spine, but she refused to be intimidated. "Arrest? What are you arresting me for? I haven't done anything wrong. I'm simply standing up for myself." A tense silence filled the air as the situation continued to escalate. Bridget, Marty, and Officer Humphrey stood in an unspoken alliance, their gazes trained on Carla. But Carla wasn't going to back down. Not now, not after everything she had fought for in her life. "Are you going to arrest me for refusing to hand over my personal belongings?" she asked, her voice unwavering, cutting through the tension. The officer looked at her for a moment, his expression unreadable. Then, without a word, he turned to Marty. "Marty, can you bring the bag? We'll check it for any stolen items." Carla's chest tightened. The humiliation was unbearable. "No," she said, her voice strong despite the fear creeping in. "You don't have my consent to search my bag. And you don't have a reason to." The officer's eyes narrowed as he took a step closer. "I don't need your consent. You've already broken the law by causing a scene. Now, you're going to comply, or there will be consequences." Carla's pulse quickened, but she didn't let fear take hold. "You're wrong. I know my rights. And you're not going to bully me into giving them up." Marty approached, holding Carla's bag, his face impassive. He handed it over to Officer Humphrey without a word. The officer took the bag in his hands and, without hesitation, began to unzip it. The moment felt surreal, as if time had slowed. Carla's heart pounded in her chest, but she kept her stance firm, her arms crossed, her back straight. She wouldn't be treated like this. She wouldn't let them break her. The officer sifted through her belongings as if it was just another routine search. The silence in the store was suffocating, the only sound being the soft rustle of items in her bag. Carla's mind raced. This couldn't be happening. Not here. Not now. But then, as if on cue, the phone in Carla's pocket vibrated. She pulled it out quickly, glancing at the caller ID. It was the mayor's office. Her heart skipped a beat. "Excuse me," Carla said, her voice cutting through the tense silence. "I need to take this call." Officer Humphrey paused, giving her a cold stare. "This is not the time for phone calls, ma'am." But Carla didn't care. She answered the call anyway. "Hello," she said, her voice calm but urgent. "Ms. Johnson," a familiar voice responded. "This is Karen from the mayor's office. We received your complaint, and we're taking immediate action. Stay calm, and we'll have someone there to help you." Carla's shoulders relaxed slightly, but the fight was far from over. She looked back at Officer Humphrey. "The mayor's office is aware of what's happening here," she said, her voice steady. "You'd better rethink your actions." Officer Humphrey's expression faltered for just a moment before he regained his composure. "We're not finished here, ma'am," he growled. "You can't just call for help and expect things to change." But Carla stood tall, the weight of her words hanging in the air. "I don't need to expect anything," she replied, "because the truth is on my side." The phone call ended, and Carla's gaze remained locked on the officer, her confidence growing with each passing second. She wasn't going to let them intimidate her. Not this time. The air in the boutique had grown thick with tension, each second that passed feeling like an eternity. Carla stood resolutely, her posture straight, her arms crossed tightly over her chest. The police officer, Daniel Humphrey, glared at her as if she were the problem. His fingers gripped the handle of her bag like it was evidence in a case he'd already decided. "You're wasting everyone's time, ma'am," Officer Humphrey said, his voice low and forceful. "If you just cooperate, this could all be over." Carla's chest tightened, but her eyes remained defiant. "I'm not the one causing trouble here, officer. You're the one making this into a scene, and for no reason other than the color of my skin." His gaze hardened, his jaw tight with frustration. "I've warned you, ma'am. You're resisting arrest. I'll ask you one more time, step outside with me, and we can settle this at the station. If you don't comply, I'll have no choice but to arrest you." Carla felt the weight of his words pressing down on her, but she didn't flinch. She refused to give in, refused to let him see her break. She wasn't the one who'd done anything wrong. She knew her rights. She wasn't going to be bullied into submission. "No," Carla said, her voice calm but firm. "I'm not going anywhere. I haven't done anything wrong." Officer Humphrey stepped closer, towering over her. "You're making this harder than it has to be, ma'am. I'm not asking you. I'm telling you. Step outside now, or I will arrest you on the spot." Bridget Golden, the boutique manager, stood off to the side, watching the exchange with an impassive expression. Carla's eyes flicked toward her, and for a moment, she locked eyes with the manager. There was a sense of guilt hidden beneath the mask of professionalism that Bridget wore. But guilt wasn't going to fix this. Justice was what was needed. "Officer," Carla said, addressing him once more, "I'm not going to let you intimidate me. I've done nothing wrong. You can't arrest me for speaking my mind." Humphrey's eyes narrowed. "Don't push me, ma'am. I don't want to do this." The tension in the room thickened, and the few remaining customers in the boutique moved to the edges of the store, aware that something wasn't right but unsure of how to intervene. Carla's heart was pounding, but she kept her composure, keeping her voice steady, unwavering. "I'm not resisting, officer," Carla said. "I'm standing up for my rights, and you don't have the authority to make me leave when I've done nothing wrong." Officer Humphrey's hand twitched, as if he were about to grab her arm. Carla braced herself, but before he could act, a familiar voice broke through the standoff. "Officer Humphrey." The voice was firm, authoritative. Carla turned to see Sheriff Rosa Jaramillo entering the boutique, her presence immediately commanding the room. She was a woman in her early 50s, tall, confident, and unafraid. Her uniform, well-tailored and impeccably neat, exuded professionalism. Carla couldn't help but breathe a small sigh of relief as she saw the sheriff walk in. Sheriff Jaramillo had a reputation for fairness, for making sure justice was upheld no matter who was involved. She wasn't about to let Officer Humphrey's actions slide. "Is there a problem here?" Sheriff Jaramillo asked, her eyes scanning the room, settling on Officer Humphrey first. "This woman is causing a disturbance," Officer Humphrey said quickly, his tone defensive. "She's refusing to comply with store policy and causing problems. I was just about to arrest her for resisting." The sheriff raised an eyebrow, clearly unimpressed. "Resisting arrest? For what? A bag check?" Carla could feel the air shift. The officer's authority began to crack under the sheriff's steady gaze. "Officer Humphrey," Sheriff Jaramillo said, her voice sharp, "do you realize what you're doing right now? You're threatening to arrest a woman who hasn't broken the law, who's merely standing up for herself. That's not resisting arrest. That's called exercising your rights." Humphrey's jaw tightened, but he didn't respond. Sheriff Jaramillo turned her attention to Carla. "Ma'am, are you all right?" Carla nodded, her voice calm but full of conviction. "I'm fine, Sheriff. Just trying to get some shopping done without being harassed." The sheriff turned back to Officer Humphrey, her gaze cold. "I think you've done enough here, officer. Please step aside." Officer Humphrey hesitated for a moment, his pride bruised. But with a begrudging nod, he stepped back, allowing the sheriff to take control. "Thank you, Sheriff," Carla said, her voice full of gratitude. You don't have to thank me, ma'am, Sheriff Jaramillo said, her tone softening. It's my job to make sure everyone's treated fairly. And what's happening here isn't fair. Bridget Golden finally spoke, her voice strained. We were just following store policy. I didn't know things would escalate like this. The policy you followed isn't a policy, the sheriff said, turning to face her. It's racial profiling, and it's illegal. You've got to do better than this. Marty, who had been silent until now, shifted uncomfortably, his gaze lowering. I'm sorry, Bridget said, her voice barely above a whisper. We'll make sure this doesn't happen again. Sheriff Jaramillo turned to Carla with a reassuring smile. I'll be sure to follow up on this, ma'am. You're free to go. There won't be any charges, and I'll make sure your rights are upheld. Carla took a deep breath, the weight of the situation lifting off her shoulders. The battle wasn't over, but this moment was a victory. The weight of the moment hung in the air as Officer Daniel Humphrey slowly backed away from Carla, the silent tension still thick in the boutique. The store's fluorescent lights buzzed softly, their hum a stark contrast to the quiet chaos that had just unfolded. Sheriff Rosa Jaramillo stood tall beside Carla, a protective presence in the otherwise cold room. Bridget Golden and Marty were silent, their discomfort palpable as they stood off to the side, avoiding eye contact with Carla. Carla exhaled slowly, the adrenaline still coursing through her veins. Despite the sheriff's intervention, she could feel the unsettling gaze of Officer Humphrey on her. But as the minutes passed, the officer seemed to retreat, both physically and emotionally, now realizing he had miscalculated this confrontation. Thank you, Sheriff, Carla said, her voice calm, though a deep undercurrent of anger still pulsed beneath her words. I appreciate you stepping in. Sheriff Jaramillo nodded, her face softening slightly. You didn't deserve this, ma'am. What's happening here shouldn't have happened, and it won't happen again. I just wanted to buy a dress, Carla replied, her frustration returning in full force. But here I am, fighting for my dignity because of the color of my skin. I understand, the sheriff said, her voice sympathetic yet strong. We all deserve better than this. And I won't let this incident slide. As Sheriff Jaramillo spoke, Carla's phone buzzed in her pocket. She pulled it out, quickly glancing at the screen. The mayor's office. A chill ran through her, but it wasn't fear. It was the feeling of being seen, of knowing that she wasn't alone in this fight. Carla quickly answered the call. Hello, Ms. Johnson. A voice on the other end said, firm yet calm. This is Karen from the mayor's office. We've been briefed on your situation, and we're taking immediate action. Carla blinked, surprised by the swift response. The mayor's office? Yes, ma'am, Karen cut in. We've received your complaint, and the mayor is personally overseeing the investigation into what's happened here. You're not alone in this. We'll have someone from our office arrive at the store shortly to ensure everything is handled appropriately. Carla felt a wave of relief wash over her. Thank you, she said, her voice steady but full of emotion. Thank you for listening. You're welcome, Karen replied. Please stay calm. The mayor will make sure this is taken seriously. We'll be in touch soon. The call ended, and for the first time since the confrontation began, Carla allowed herself to breathe a little easier. She looked up at Sheriff Jaramillo, who had been waiting patiently while she took the call. They're taking this seriously, Carla said, her words carrying a sense of newfound hope. The sheriff's expression softened, though her resolve remained firm. That's what we need. The mayor's office has power, and it's good to see them backing you up. This is just the beginning. Just as Carla was about to speak again, the front door of the boutique opened, and a tall figure stepped inside. The woman exuded an air of authority and calm confidence. She was dressed impeccably in a professional suit, her heels clicking on the tile floor. She was no stranger to power, and her presence commanded respect. Ms. Johnson, the woman called out as she approached, her voice clear and unwavering. Carla turned to face her, recognition sparking in her mind. Yes, I'm Karen Lewis, the woman said, extending her hand. I'm with the mayor's office. The mayor sent me to ensure that you were treated with the respect you deserve. Carla shook her hand firmly, still processing the fact that the mayor's office had made good on their word. Thank you for coming, she said, her voice laden with gratitude and disbelief. I didn't think anyone would care, but here you are. We care, Karen replied, her voice steady. The mayor has been briefed on the situation, and we won't let this slip through the cracks. I'm here to make sure you're not further mistreated and that those responsible face the consequences of their actions. Carla felt her chest tighten, a mixture of relief and disbelief flooding her system. This is really happening? It is, Karen said firmly. And I'm here to make sure it gets resolved the right way. Sheriff Jaramillo stepped forward, her tone professional but assertive. We've already started addressing the misconduct here. I'm ensuring the department investigates Officer Humphrey's behavior. Carla, you have our full support. Carla nodded, her eyes brimming with emotion. I never imagined this would happen today. All I wanted was a simple shopping experience, and now I'm fighting for justice. But this time, I'm not fighting alone. Not anymore, Karen said, her eyes steady. And we're going to make sure that justice is served. The conversation was interrupted by Marty, who nervously approached the group. I just wanted to say. I didn't mean for things to get so out of hand, he muttered, his voice low. I was just following orders. Carla turned to face him, her eyes sharp. Well, you need to realize that blindly following orders doesn't make you exempt from responsibility. You're complicit in this. Marty shifted uncomfortably but said nothing further. Karen stepped forward. Marty, I suggest you stay out of this. We'll be following up with the store to ensure this never happens again. As the tension began to ease, the reality of the situation hit Carla harder than ever. She had been standing alone against the tide of discrimination, but now, with the mayor's office involved, things were changing. I won't let this happen to anyone else, Carla said quietly, more to herself than anyone else. Not if I can help it. Good, Karen said, her tone resolute. We'll help you. But this is just the beginning, Ms. Johnson. We're going to make sure this is the last time something like this happens. The following days moved in a blur for Carla. What began as an ordinary shopping trip had now turned into a fight for her rights, and she felt the weight of it with each passing moment. The support from the mayor's office was palpable, but Carla knew that it was just the beginning of a long journey ahead. She had received countless updates from Karen Lewis, the mayor's representative, who kept her informed about the ongoing investigation. Officer Daniel Humphrey had been placed on administrative leave pending an internal review, and Bridget Golden, the boutique manager, was being questioned about her role in the discriminatory actions. But for Carla, the process felt slow. The fight wasn't just about this one incident. It was about changing a system that had allowed racial profiling and discrimination to thrive. It was about holding those in power accountable, making sure that no one else would have to go through what she had endured. It was the evening after one such update when Carla received a call that she had been waiting for. Her phone rang, and when she saw the number, her heart skipped a beat. Hello? Carla answered, her voice steady. Ms. Johnson, it's Karen Lewis. I wanted to personally update you on the investigation's progress. Carla sat up straighter, her attention sharp. Please, go ahead. We've reviewed the footage from the boutique security cameras, Karen began. It's clear that Officer Humphrey overstepped his authority, and his actions were entirely unjustified. The department is moving forward with disciplinary action. He's facing suspension, and we're recommending he be terminated from the force. Bridget Golden and Marty, the security guard, will both face internal disciplinary actions as well. Carla's heart raced. For the first time, it felt like something real was happening. She hadn't imagined that this would be the outcome, but now it was within reach. That's good news, Carla said, her voice barely above a whisper. But is it enough? We're pushing for more, Karen replied. The mayor has made it clear that this is unacceptable behavior and that we need to take steps to ensure it never happens again, not just in this boutique, but across the city. Carla closed her eyes for a moment, her breath steadying. The weight she had carried for days now seemed a little lighter. I don't want just action. I want change, she said. I want the system to be held accountable, from the police to the stores to the people who think they can act with impunity. We're working on it, Ms. Johnson. We're starting with this case, but we're already looking at broader systemic changes to prevent racial profiling and discrimination in businesses and law enforcement. This case will set the tone for others. Carla's resolve strengthened with every word Karen spoke. She wasn't alone in this fight anymore. Thank you, Karen. I appreciate everything the mayor's office is doing. You're the one who deserves the thanks, Ms. Johnson, Karen said softly. You're the one who had the courage to stand up and be heard. Carla smiled, a small but significant shift in her expression. I'm just getting started. The call ended, and for the first time in days, Carla allowed herself to relax a little. She still had work to do. There were countless people who would never get the opportunity she had. But for tonight, she allowed herself a moment of peace. The next morning, Carla stood at the front of the boutique again, a sense of determination burning in her chest. She had a meeting with the store's owner, someone who had been notably absent from the whole ordeal. It was time for them to take responsibility for what had happened under their roof. She walked into the boutique, her heels clicking against the polished floor, the familiar scent of expensive perfumes lingering in the air. This time, she wasn't just another customer. This time, she was a force to be reckoned with. The store owner, a well-dressed man in his mid-50s, stood behind the counter as Carla approached. His face was a mask of polite indifference, but Carla could see the unease in his eyes as she walked in. "Ms. Johnson, I assume you're here to discuss the incident?" he asked, trying to sound professional but failing to mask the discomfort in his voice. Carla nodded, standing tall. "I am. I've already spoken with the mayor's office, and it's clear that what happened here was not just an isolated incident. It was systemic. And now, you're going to be held accountable for the actions of your employees." The owner shifted uncomfortably. "We've already addressed the matter internally, and we've taken disciplinary action. Officer Humphrey is on leave, and Bridget Golden and Marty are facing consequences as well." "That's a start," Carla said, her voice unwavering. "But you need to do more. This isn't just about firing a few people. This is about changing the culture within this store, within your staff, and within the community." The owner looked at her for a long moment, his expression unreadable. Finally, he nodded, albeit reluctantly. "You're right. I'll work with the mayor's office to put new training in place for all of our employees. We'll make sure this never happens again." Carla's eyes softened, but only slightly. "I hope so. This is your chance to show that you care about more than just your reputation. This is about real change." She turned to leave, the weight of her words hanging in the air. As she walked out the door, Carla felt a quiet satisfaction. The reckoning had begun. It wasn't over, but it was starting to feel like justice was within reach. The weeks that followed were a blur of meetings, statements, and a growing sense of determination. Carla Johnson had become a symbol of strength in her community, and with each passing day, she felt the power of her voice becoming louder, more resonant. The fight wasn't just hers anymore. It belonged to everyone who had been silenced, overlooked, or wronged. The city council had held a special session to address the rising issue of racial profiling, and Carla had been invited to speak. Standing at the podium, her gaze swept over the crowd, politicians, activists, community leaders. She wasn't just speaking for herself anymore. She was speaking for everyone who had ever been unfairly targeted, belittled, or dismissed because of their race. And in that moment, she knew her fight was far from over. "Thank you for giving me the opportunity to speak today," Carla began, her voice steady but filled with emotion. "I never imagined that a simple trip to the store would lead me here. That one moment, when I was asked to give up my bag simply because of my skin color, has become a defining moment in my life. And I know I'm not the only one who's faced this kind of treatment." She paused, letting her words sink in. The room was silent, every ear tuned to her. "People like me, black people, people of color, are treated differently every day. We're questioned, harassed, and sometimes even arrested for doing nothing more than living our lives. And it's time for that to stop." A murmur ran through the room, but Carla pressed on. "This isn't just about one store or one police officer," she continued. "It's about a system that has allowed these injustices to persist. It's about a culture where certain people feel entitled to treat others like they don't matter. But we matter. Our lives matter." Her voice grew stronger with each word. "The actions of Officer Daniel Humphrey, of Bridget Golden, of Marty O'Connor, were not isolated. They are symptoms of a much bigger issue. An issue that has been ignored for far too long. But now we're here, and we're not going anywhere." There was a shift in the room. The weight of Carla's words hung in the air, and for the first time, it felt like real change might be possible. "As a community," Carla said, "we need to hold each other accountable. This isn't just about punishing those who have wronged us. It's about creating a future where this kind of behavior isn't tolerated, where no one has to fight to be treated with dignity and respect." When Carla finished her speech, the room erupted in applause. The standing ovation was not just for her, but for every person who had ever been silenced, ignored, or made to feel less than. It was a powerful reminder that one voice could make a difference, even when the odds seemed insurmountable. Afterward, Carla stood by the podium, her heart pounding in her chest. She had said everything she needed to say. The mayor approached her, his face serious yet full of respect. "Ms. Johnson," the mayor said, shaking her hand firmly. "That was a powerful speech. I can assure you, we are moving forward with the changes you fought for. Your courage is inspiring." "Thank you, Mayor," Carla said, her voice steady but filled with gratitude. "But this is just the beginning. We need to ensure that these changes are sustained, that they're not just words on paper, but real, lasting reform. The mayor nodded. You have my word. We're committed to that. We'll work with law enforcement, with businesses, and with community organizations to make sure this doesn't happen again. And we'll hold those responsible accountable. Carla gave him a small, satisfied smile. That's all I can ask for. Later that evening, Carla sat alone in her apartment, her thoughts swirling. It had been a long road, and the victory she had achieved felt bittersweet. Yes, justice had been served in her case, but she knew there was still so much work to be done. Racial profiling and discrimination were not problems that could be solved overnight. They were deeply entrenched in society. But Carla had made a dent in that armor. And for the first time in a long while, she allowed herself to feel proud of the progress she had made. The phone rang, breaking her reverie. It was Karen Lewis from the mayor's office. Hello, Ms. Johnson, Karen said warmly. I wanted to personally thank you again for your efforts. The council passed the new reforms today. We're implementing new training for law enforcement, and businesses will be required to adhere to stricter guidelines regarding racial profiling. Carla's heart lifted at the news. That's incredible. Thank you for all your support, Karen. I couldn't have done this without you. You did the hard part, Ms. Johnson, Karen replied. Your courage inspired everyone around you. Carla smiled, the weight of the journey still heavy on her, but not unbearable. This isn't just about me anymore. It's about everyone who's been overlooked, everyone who's been denied justice. We've made a start, but we've got a long way to go. That's the spirit, Karen said. And we'll be right there with you every step of the way. As Carla hung up the phone, she sat back in her chair, the weight of the day lifting slightly. She had made a difference. She had brought about change. And though the road ahead would be long and difficult, she wasn't walking it alone. She had sparked a movement, one that would continue to grow long after the headlines faded, long after the applause died down. It wasn't just about justice for herself. It was about justice for everyone. And that, Carla knew, was worth fighting for.